Thank you, Mr President. I thank the honourable members for their contribution and their indication of their support of this incredibly important select committee to inquire into mental health services for police and more broadly support for our police and their families. I'd like to particularly acknowledge the Honourable Ms Franks, the Honourable Mr Pangello, the Honourable Nicola Centofanti and the Honourable Ian Hunter for their contributions on behalf of their respective parties. Mr President, we know that our police are met with challenges and risks to their safety by the virtue of the nature of their employment. What is important to acknowledge is the reality that, as society changes, so too do the risks of the challenges that our police face. Not that long ago, within most of our lifetimes, including my own, mental health and PTSD was a topic that wasn't really discussed. It was a topic that was a little taboo. Whilst those discussions have changed, there can always be more to be done to ensure that we continue to check in with those who serve our community to keep us safe, to make sure that they are given the best support that they need to be able to do their service safely and, importantly, after they finish that service. This committee intends to explore the mental health services and support provided to existing and former police and their families, police morale, resourcing and recruiting within SAPOL. I note amendments proposed to the terms of reference of this committee. Due to the level of interest in this committee, the terms of reference are proposed to be amended by amendment standing in the Honourable Nicola Centofanti's name, which will insert a new paragraph 1A to accommodate for additional committee members than provided in the standing orders. I thank members for their keen interest in this incredibly important area and look forward to working very closely with them in this space. I also indicate that the opposition will be supporting new subparagraph FA in the Honourable Mr Frank Pangello's amendment, which looks at the prevalence, cause and effect of post-traumatic stress disorder among serving and retired police officers and prevention strategies to mitigate risk. I further indicate that the opposition will be opposing new subparagraph FB, submitted by the Honourable Mr Pangello, which expands the scope of the committee to consider legislative amendments to the Return to Work Act to prescribe that when a serving or former police officer is diagnosed with PTSD, it is presumed to have arisen from their employment in the absence of proof to the contrary, and to the extent to which other first responders who deal directly with emergency situations when performing paid or voluntary work should be captured in the legislative amendments, including but not limited to ambulance officers, firefighters, nurses, medical practitioners, members of the SACFS and SASES, correctional services and train drivers. The Honourable Mr Pangello is correct to suggest that all of our frontline workers face challenges with their mental health. There is no denying the challenging nature of their work or the sacrifices that come with the nature of doing that work. And I commend the Honourable Mr Pangello for his consistent and his passionate advocacy in this space. The intention of the establishment of this committee, as the title suggests, however, was to inquire into support and mental health services for our police. While addressing an important topic, the proposed amendment by the Honourable Frank Pangello exceeds beyond the intention of the establishment of this committee to be able to look closely at and focus squarely on the practices within SAPOL. The nature of employment, challenges and support programs provided to frontline workers will vary immensely across the board. While there are some common issues, the risks faced by our police ultimately vary to that faced by our nurses, to our firefighters, to our ambulance officers and to our train drivers. It is my concern that including all frontline workers as a blanket group wrongly assumes that they are all the same, but they're not, and their needs will vary immensely. It broadens the scope of the committee to a point where, within limited resources, it may only be able to hear high-level evidence of these very many groups, services and challenges. As such, I query whether we would be doing the needs of these groups a disservice to group them together as one and by doing so diluting the focus. I note the Parliament currently has a select committee on the Return to Work SA scheme, which may be better suited to consider any legislative changes to the Return to Work Act in consideration of evidence and submissions this committee will have already received to date. I note that Honourable Mr Pangello has existing advocacy in this space through his Return to Work Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Amendment Bill, which he's discussed this evening, which proposes similar to that in clause clause FB, which is currently on the notice paper. It is my intention for this committee to be able to look very closely at police support and the challenges our men and women in uniform face and report back to this Parliament on how we can assist in protecting and improving the support services for those who put themselves at risk to keep our community safe every single day. This committee was intended to be specific to police. Nonetheless, I appreciate that the Honourable Mr Pangello may have the support of this chamber to make this amendment. I indicate that the opposition will oppose subparagraph FB, but ultimately will support the committee in its final form. The opposition, but in particular myself, look forward to conducting this very important work of this committee for the benefit of those who put themselves in harm's way every single day to keep us safe, and to ensure that our police are given the support that they need.
So, the first question I'm going to put is that the amendment, not amendments, the amendment in the name of the Honourable Mr Pangello be agreed to. Those for the question say aye. Aye. Against say no. The ayes have it. The next question I'm going to put is that new paragraph 1A is proposed to be inserted by the Honourable N.J. Chentofanti be agreed to. Those for the question say aye. Aye. Against say no. The ayes have it. So the final question is that the motion moved by the Honourable L.A. Henderson and is amended by the Honourable Mr Pangello and the Honourable Ms Chentofanti be agreed to. Those for the question say aye. Aye. Against say no. The ayes have it.
The honourable member's concern, I move that order today probably
Now,
number 40.
The Honourable Mr Hunter, we just established a committee. The Honourable Mrs Henderson.
Thank you, Mr President. I move that the Select Committee consist of the Honourable E.S. Burke, the Honourable T.A. Franks, the Honourable S.L. Game, the Honourable T.G.E. Hood, the Honourable I.K. Hunter, the Honourable F. Pangello and the mover.
Put the question. Those are the questions say aye. Against say no. The ayes have it.
Mr President, I move that the Select Committee have power to send for persons, papers and records, to adjourn from place to place and to report on the 29th of November 2023.
And that's second to put the question. Those for the question say aye. Against say no. The ayes have it. The Honourable Mr Hunter.